Hello and welcome everybody to our Local Heritage List project webinar. So this is the first one of two sessions that we're going to run together. They are a duplication, so you don't need to come to both sessions. So obviously one this evening, and then we're running another one on Tuesday next week, but during daytime rather than evening. So anybody that isn't able to come tonight is able to come on Tuesday, they'd be more than welcome. This is a session really for everyone. We've been particularly focused on contacting our local community groups, as they do represent quite a large number of people, but we're also very much welcoming individuals. I know there's a number of individuals that are also probably attending tonight or on Tuesday. So just welcoming everybody and welcoming you, everybody, and across the whole of Dorset. So BCP, Council Area and Dorset are represented here today. So I'm going to do some introductions now because you can see some faces showing here, and just want to introduce the people that are here. My name's Caroline Peach. I'm the Urban Design and Conservation Manager for BCP in the planning team. Can I ask Alison?
Hi everybody, I'm glad you're all able to come tonight. My name's Alison Turnock. I'm the Service Manager for Conservation at Dorset Council, and I manage the conservation team and the tree team. And I will pass you over to James.
Thanks, Alison. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I'm James Weir. I'm one of the senior conservation officers at Dorset Council, and I deal particularly in heritage input to spatial planning matters, things like the local plan and neighbourhood plans and what have you, as well as dealing with, again, heritage input to major planning applications.
Thank you very much. And Sarah, you've already met and been introduced, so thank you. That's us. So I'm going to just explain a little bit about what we're going to do this evening, our webinar content. So what we want to do is, as Sarah explained, we're going to run through a presentation for you, but we're going to make sure we leave plenty of time for questions and answers at the end. And as Sarah explained, we're going to run the presentation with the, as a whole, and then we'll do those questions at the end. So if you do think of anything while we're talking, please just make a note of it, write it down so you remember for the end, because you may forget by the time you get to the end. So encourage you to do that. So we're going to cover a bit about project background. I think Alison's going to talk to us a little bit about where we are, how we are where we are. We're going to talk a bit about heritage assets, what they actually are, and why it's good to have a list of local heritage assets. That's basically explaining why we're here doing what we're doing, really. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're going to make sure that the list is robust and what that really means. We're going to show you a video on how to make a nomination, which I really hope will be a practical, useful tool for you to sort of just see how that is done and how to do that. And we are going to talk a little bit more about the sort of level and expectations, if it were, about how to sort of fill in the paperwork, and hopefully show that it's not quite as sort of big and onerous as perhaps some are fearing. James is also going to talk us through some examples, some case studies, so trying to just demonstrate to you how this works and how we'll be applying some of the sort of criteria and some of the ideas behind making nominations. So explain a bit more about that and apply it to some actual sort of sites on the ground. And then we're going to explain what's going to happen next once we've got all these nominations from you, which we hope you're going to send us through. We're going to explain about what those next steps are, and then we'll move into our questions and answer sessions and do our best to answer as many things as we can. So I think I'm handing over now to Alison.
Thank you, Caroline. So the start of this project really was autumn 2020, when a funding stream was announced by what was the MHCLG. I always had problems with that. So it's now the Department of Levelling Up Housing and Communities, which is much easier to say, for councils to create a list of local heritage assets. It was a very tight time schedule. I think it's probably fair to say that originally we were looking at having maybe a bid for Dorset and a bid for BCP, but we had a very strong steer that they were looking for ideally some county-wide bids. So in that autumn, we started working with BCP to work up a joint bid. And I have to say, from my perspective, that's been a really very helpful thing, because it's been one of the main ways that we've actually in Dorset been working practically with BCP jointly on a project, and that's been a really good exercise in partnership working. So we spent quite a lot of time making sure that we included the areas that we wanted to within the bid. And the bid really was for local authorities to develop their own local lists of heritage assets, which I'm going to come on to in a minute or two to explain the background for that. So in Dorset, we haven't got one at the moment. We heard in spring 2021 that we'd been successful in obtaining funding, and actually the government reported that they'd had such a good response to the original funding announcement that they doubled the amount of funding and gave funding to 22 local authorities. So we heard about that last spring, and we've been working since then to get the infrastructure in place, really, if you like, to actually enable all of you really to nominate assets that you would like to see on our local lists. We appointed land use consultants in the summer to be leading the work for us, because both local authorities have not got the capacity to bring together a team to actually do the work on that. And they have spent the last few months looking at the criteria that we want to be using, and James will be talking about that later in the session, and talking with the various comms teams and GIS teams to develop the website and the best way of submitting your nominations. Now, I'd just like to say, originally, all of us were extremely keen on getting everybody together and having some public consultations in person. And obviously, with the way COVID's continued, it's not been possible to do that. So we are using these webinars, which it has benefits and disbenefits, but we'd be interested in potentially getting some feedback on what you'd like to see in the future. So where we are now, February to April, we've now launched our public consultation to seek nominations for heritage assets to go on our local lists, and we're going to have an 8-week consultation period, which will be finishing, I think, on the 11th of April. So you've still got well over a month to get your nominations in. Can I have the next slide, please, Sarah? So just to give a little bit of background, which I know some of you will know and others may not, about some of the different types of heritage assets that we've got and what we're looking for in this particular project. We obviously have different levels of assets. International designations can include things like World Heritage Sites. Built World Heritage Sites can include things like Stonehenge, Iron Bridge, Blenheim Palace. The one that everybody knows round here obviously is the Jurassic Coast, which is a natural World Heritage Site, but there are built World Heritage Sites are the ones that I've just mentioned. National designations include things like Scheduled Ancient Monuments, which can be in a variety of assets. Fairly near to where I live, we have Wareham Walls, which actually circled Saxon walls, which encircled the original town, and they are a Scheduled Ancient Monument of national importance. And we have things like listed buildings, which are designated nationally, and we have many thousands of those, and even across Dorset we reckon around 12,500 of those. Local heritage assets include things at a local level like conservation areas, and there's over 10,000 of those across the whole country designated by local authorities, which have architectural qualities or historic merit. Many of you may live in or near conservation areas. There are a lot across the two local authorities. I think we've got around 187 in Dorset, and I know there'll be I don't know the numbers for BCP, but Caroline may want to mention that later. And then we have local heritage assets. So they're the ones that are of interest and valued by the local community. James is going to be going into a bit more detail later on about the different types of heritage assets that we're looking for you to put nominations in about. Broadly speaking, we're looking at 4 categories: buildings, structures, sites and places, and gardens and designed landscapes. So if you know of any local assets that you think should be put on a local list, then please start getting your list together and working on your nominations. Can I have the next slide, please, Sarah? So why have a list of local heritage assets? First of all, we don't absolutely have to have a list. It's not a requirement or a statutory duty of local authorities to do this. Local heritage can be recognised without a list. However, a list is a really useful thing to have because, as it says here, one of the benefits is having a public record of the local heritage that's valued and recognised by the local community. Means that it's actually there, recorded, and in a form that those making decisions on planning applications and other policy issues can actually lay their hands on it very easily. They can still be recognised in planning terms as a material consideration in planning applications. However, it's much more piecemeal and much more difficult for those making those decisions to do it if you haven't got a local list. BCP has some historic local lists from their legacy authorities, but in Dorset we don't have an existing local list, and we're very keen to use this process as a way of working up towards a local list. And it's a great opportunity for us to actually get a lot of buildings and other assets nominated within a defined time period, and actually have support from land use consultants to actually start to shape that into a format that we can take to our local members, and we'll be talking about that a bit more later. So to summarise, that the key reasons are we're getting upfront clarity to developers, property owners, the community and decision makers as to where the local assets are, so that they know that it's worth keeping those in mind when they're coming up with their proposals, and that information has been agreed and gone through a local public consultation process, and gone through a process with our elected members. Thank you very much. I think that I'm going on to Caroline, so I will switch my mic off. Thanks, Caroline.
Thank you. Thanks, Alison. It's a bit of a tag team, this, isn't it? Hand over here, hand over there. So yeah, just going to mention here about the making sure the list that we end up with is robust, and that it's sort of is sort of useful, usable, and that it will sort of stand the test of time and go through the sort of the process that we have for planning, that it sort of stands up to that and it withstands sort of some sort of scrutiny. So that's one of the reasons why we're going through a fairly why we're asking what we are in the way that we are, for that reason really. So we've actually, through working with LUC consultants, who've helped come up with some criteria and values which we're going to use as sort of benchmark and apply to each of the different types of heritage asset. So those different those criteria, those values, we've got 6 of them. And we'll apply all of them, but not all of them may be relevant. This is something that James is going to touch on when he starts talking about case studies and applying it sort of in a practical way, because it's not always relevant to each of the different types of heritage assets. So the information that we're going to receive from you we'll be sort of looking at how it relates then to the different criteria. And then the next part of the assessment that we'll do is actually understanding, okay, well, you have an asset and we understand it meets these particular criteria, but how important is it in terms of how it meets that criteria? How significant is it? It's all about building up this picture. So as part of that assessment, what we're going to do is look at and understand whether it's of local interests at an outstanding level, a high level, a moderate level. It has little local interest, or it doesn't apply at all. It has none. So it starts to sort of add some kind of value to that. So it's trying to be as kind of objective as we can and as consistent as we can to sort of build out that picture of how important a particular asset might be. So it just got that level of rigour and scrutiny applied. This is so that we can look to see which of those heritage assets actually meet a standard, because not everything that's nominated will necessarily, once it's been through that process, be of a standard that is appropriate to put on that list for that in the way that I've just described. So there will be some assets that will be nominated to us that won't meet that standard, and they won't be added to the list or won't be recommended to be added to the list. And in the case of BCP, where Alison was mentioning that BCP have existing local heritage assets that are on a local list, there were some of those that may not be appropriate anymore if they've been tested through this process, or that the list just in itself needs updating because circumstances have changed and assets maybe have changed significantly or are no longer there. So there's a whole series of sort of updates and assessment that's going to take place as part of this process. So quite involved. Some of that is about what we're doing rather than what you're doing. So trying to just explain what is going to happen once your nomination is in with us. We're essentially going to be assessing it against criteria and then seeing how significant it is to be able to meet that standard and level. Okay, you'll be pleased to hear you'll get the exciting point where you get to watch a video. So this video might be a little bit quiet, so I suggest if you might want to check your own sound quality and maybe turn it up a notch or two if you struggle to hear the lovely Fiona talking to us, but I'll hand over to Fiona.
Hello, I'm Fiona. I'm Senior Communications Officer for Dorset Council, and I'm going to show you how to nominate an asset on the local heritage list. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to go to the website. So that's www.dorsetcouncil.gov.uk/local heritage list without any gaps in. And we get that page up there. So there's all sorts of bits of information here, but we're just going to go straight to nominate an asset. Now, before you submit the form, I'll read through this bits of information here. If you click if the asset has already been designated, this you can then actually search and see whether it's listed already. So I have a place. I'm going to try the piddle in. That's what I'm going to be doing. Dorset Council. Oh no, I didn't want to do that. So there we go. And press OK. Pop something in there. Paste. And go. And there we go. So that's. And no, it hasn't been nominated. So it's just in a conservation area. So that's OK. So we're going to go back to nominate an asset. So you can read all through that. You can nominate an asset at the top here, or you can start down here. So we'll start here. And the heritage asset that you are nominating, it is a building. Asset name, it is the Piddle Inn. Whoops. And the addresses, I've got that already typed up, so I can just put that straight in. there, and obviously that's the postcode there, so it's just easier if you've got that all there. And I'm going to put the exact location on the map because I know where it is. I can circle it and use that, so I'm going to use that, but you can use any of those other things. Additional local information, I haven't got anything on that. Heritage significance of the asset, it is actually of communal value, so this has been location of a public house since 1890. It's changed. It was previously known as the Green Dragon. I've got a picture, so I've got one saved up just there, so I'm going to pop that in. I don't have copyright for that photo because I just picked it off of the website, so yeah, better not do that. Haven't got any other supporting documentation on that. So asset location. So again, I'm going to just put in the postcode there so that we can search it. I need to get in a bit closer. And you can draw around it. You can either use those as shapes or freehand. So I'm going to do a freehand tool, and then I'm just going to go, oops, a bit wobbly around the edges. There we go. So that's perfect for me. And then my details. So I'm Fiona King. I'm just going to do County Hall as my address, my email, work address, and work telephone, certainly address, yeah. Only if your preferred method is contact by phone. It's not, I prefer to be contacted by email. So there we go. I give consent, so I'm going to do that. And as I sort of said, preferred method of contact is there, and then I could submit it. And that is it. That's all that is involved. So I hope you found that useful. Thank you very much for just watching this. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you to Fiona for recording that for us. I'm going to jump in now, if I may. I will say first, my understanding is that the that video will be uploaded to our website, so Dorset Council and BCP Council's websites, so it can be viewed again, perhaps on a larger screen, or if there were any issues with volume. Yeah, so what I'd like to do now, if I may, is to just go through some of the case studies which we've put together, and again, which can be found on both websites, which are there for the different types of heritage asset, which we've sort of identified as sort of categories, which hopefully catch all of the possible assets that could be nominated. So I've effectively selected one from each of the categories in the hope that sort of illustrates the kind of structure or asset that could fall into that category, but also to have a look more at those values which Caroline mentioned. And again, greater description about those values can also be found on the websites, include definitions as well as sort of factors which can affect those values. In fact, you're going to hear the word value probably more than you ever have in your life, probably over the next few minutes, for which I apologise. But it's these values which effectively give the heritage assets what we call in planning terms, their significance, what makes them significant. So without further ado, the first one here I've got sort of under buildings, which is 709 Christchurch Road in Boscombe. Many of those in the local area will be more familiar with it as formerly Motorbits until a couple of years ago, which stands sort of proudly and prominently on Christchurch Road as you exit Boscombe. So I've put some of the sort of typical values which we might expect to find with this particular asset. Being a building, of course, we start with architectural value. So for architectural value, the particular value of this is that it was designed by a very prolific firm of architects called AJ Seal & Partners, which was the successor group to Seal & Hardy, which were another very famous partnership of architects in the 20s through to the 30s and then beyond as the partners. Very innovative architectural practice in particularly around Bournemouth, with many buildings in the Art Deco, and what we have here, a sort of a later development of Art Deco, the Streamline Moderne, which was actually something which grew in America and didn't really take on hugely in Britain, although you can find it. So this is a relatively early example of that in a provincial town dating from 1935. And one of the particular features which are distinctive of that style are obviously the sort of the heavy focus on glazing, sort of horizontal forms, curvilinear elevations, and then if you look at the top, you can see a sort of a particularly nice stair tower with a projecting fin, which is something you particularly find, and you see it a lot on cinemas of the mid 30s and onwards. So overall, it gives it a sort of very lightweight and smooth and sort of aerodynamic appearance, which is some of the things that contribute to its architectural value. In terms of its illustrative value, this is really, just to summarize, is really how well does the building tell us anything about how it was built or how it was used, and does it illustrate anything about wider themes, so not just about the building itself. In this case, the building's been changed quite extensively. It was certainly on the ground floor. If you poke your head through the glass, you can see that it's essentially been sort of knocked through and stripped out. But nonetheless, the building itself retains a good deal of historical illustrative value through its use of materials which are particularly common to Streamline Moderne buildings, such as reinforced concrete and steel. Again, giving it the ability to take those shapes and very light forms. The particular advances in materials and glazing were illustrated here very well by the heavily lit front elevations. And on a more general theme, it illustrates the general drive in this architectural style for sort of cleanliness and efficiency and progression, which is very much a theme of that particular sort of post-depression architecture, which this effectively was. So again, that sort of illustrates that modernity. The associative value is really, is it linked to any particular person or particular architect or particular event? Is there an association? And that can be distinct. We've separated that from illustrative because the two can actually exist sort of separately. They don't always have to be the same. So in this case, thinking on a local level, it deals very well with the expansion of the service providers within the Bournemouth and Boscombe and Poole areas around the mid-30s, when quite a few of them started designing very high status sort of buildings. And another example for those of you who know Bournemouth very well is the former Electric House on Yelverton Road, which is now Del Marco's Cafe, which is also designed in that sort of very typical sort of Art Deco style. So that sort of has that association with this local sort of expansion of services in the mid-30s. And its aesthetic value again is something is a reaction we have to the building or its architecture. In this case, again, it is a pleasing building. That style of building tends to be something that catches the eye, and especially so in the street scene of Boscombe. Thank you, Sarah. Can I have the next slide, if I may? Thank you very much. So looking at structures, somewhat umbrella term, really for anything that we perhaps reasonably wouldn't call a building. So here we have a memorial, again, which can be found all over Dorset in villages and companies and all sorts of areas where colleagues were commemorated. So here we have the 43rd Wessex Division Memorial in Wynyards Gap, which is just north of Bemister. So in this case, obviously, the communal value is probably something that we'd immediately look for with these sorts of things as being a sort of focal point for commemoration and memorial services associated with the loss of life in both world wars. And that connection with the world wars is what gives it its associative value as a sort of permanent record to those who lost their lives. And in this case, digging a little deeper, one can find that the plaque was actually designed by a very well-known foundry in London who had a particular connection with fine arts. So all these things have associative value. Obviously, the illustrative value is that it illustrates the impact of the two world wars on local communities. Obviously, the memorial still functions as a memorial. Usually, although not always, listing the names of those that were lost. The architectural value is something you may not immediately consider as being related to a monument, but actually that's not always the case, because they tend to follow, if you look at sort of even war memorials, they tend to follow wider trends in architecture. So this one, for example, has a very typical sort of mid-20th century form. Which the sort of style you can find on buildings of the late 1940s and 50s, fairly simple and simple forms that sort of very typical of that post-war period. And again, it can also just come in the quality of the architecture, the quality of the design, and that's the same really for the aesthetic value, where here it was the skill of the sculptor and the skill of the engraver who created the plaques on which sit on the monument. So they're the sorts of things which give the structure its aesthetic value. Thank you, Sarah. Next slide, if I may. Moving over to sites and places, even more wide-ranging term, perhaps one that if you overthink, it starts to sound very difficult to define. But nonetheless, I think we've got a good example here in Dorchester's water meadows, which, again, for those of you who know that part of the county, sort of extend in a great arc around the north and east sides of Dorchester, and you can't help but notice them as you drive along the dual carriageway. So these, again, surprisingly, perhaps you might think, for something which isn't a building, but have a great deal of architectural value, because they're actually planned structures which which have a very distinctive design to meet a purpose. And along with that, they have a whole host of associated structures which still survive in great numbers across the meadows, such as bridges, sluices, sort of hatches and walls, sort of culverts, all these things which come together to make a sort of architectural whole, you know, a designed functioning piece of landscape, which is, again, not something you would immediately think. In terms of the associative value, again, the meadows form part of Hardy's Wessex, and the many stories which reference Casterbridge and its hinterland, and the Durnover Moor, the sort of area of water meadows and cornfields. So this part of the county is very much has that literary association with Hardy. So that's the sort of association which here we can find, and the way they illustrate. The way the water meadows have illustrative value is really the fact that they still very much, although that I'm pretty sure none of them are actually functioning, although you can still see how they functioned, again, through some of those structures that I mentioned. And they also, on a wider scale, illustrate the particular fertility of that part of Dorset for pasture and for hay, and the intensification that was typical in the post-medieval period of advances in technology which allowed people to make more of these lands. I mean, they were probably meadows in the medieval period, but we can see here how it's been intensified. So that's where we would find some the illustrative value of these particular structures. Archaeological value, again, these survive as earthworks, and you can see them very clearly. And the earthworks are what essentially constitute the visible archaeology. But there's also the potential for buried artifacts relating to the meadows, whether that's be things that people dropped as they worked the meadows, or even earlier examples of the meadows and how they were constructed. And there's also, meadows also have a good possibility for paleo-environmental archaeology as well, which can be found by boring and things through them, which can tell us a lot about how land and land use changed over time. Aesthetic value, that's something that's really arisen fortuitously, again, through the sort of scenic beauty of the landscape as you pass through it, particularly in contrast to Dorchester and the setting that it forms to that town. The communal value, the meadows are used very, very extensively by local people and visitors to the area. It's crisscrossed by a number of footpaths, some of which were sort of historic lanes connecting various settlements along that side of the river. And again, that's something that's arisen fortuitously, and something which helps us understand the sort of the character of and the setting of Dorchester. Sarah, next slide, please. And the final case study is for gardens and designed landscapes. And we've highlighted here Broadstone Cemetery. Now, again, the architectural value of a cemetery of this kind is actually in sort of two particular areas. I mean, one is in the design of the cemetery itself. Obviously, it's a planned sort of detached cemetery, and it exists in two very clear parts, and you can see that if you look at the plan of the cemetery, you can see the earlier part to the east and then the later part to the west, with its very, very clear sort of radial large radial design. So again, it's that element of planning and structure which gives it some architectural value. And then within the cemetery itself, there's the individual architecture of the various memorials and tombs, which again illustrate very, very different styles over the time of the use of the cemetery. And again, like we saw with the meadows, the cemetery has several associated structures, such as the lodge on Pottery Road on the east side, which is in a particularly fine arts and crafts style. Again, quite typical of that sort of late 19th century sort of reaction against sort of mechanization and heavy industrialization of materials. And then you can see that again on the west side, well, I think it was extended in the late 20s, where there's another little pavilion, which is very, very modest. But all these things come together to sort of give some architectural value to the cemetery as a whole. The illustrative value of the cemetery can be found in the way that it illustrates the sort of funerary practices of the time, and again, on a wider scale, looking at the development of the sort of Victorian cemeteries, which sort of appeared after the burial acts of the 1850s, right across Britain. So when you start to see these, and in this case, it was built really in the middle of nowhere originally, although it's surrounded by housing now. It was very much a very rural and detached place when it was first built, and again, that's something that's common to those sort of Victorian cemeteries. The associative value could be found again in, for example, the connection of the war graves. There's about 52 war graves. You might also, for a cemetery of this kind, you might look for associations of burial places of illustrious locals. That might be another area where you might find some association, particularly if it's associated with a particularly fine memorial or tomb. The aesthetic value again is related to the way the sort of dignified and park-like landscape that's sort of set out again very deliberately in the cemetery, and the sort of sense of tranquility that comes with it. And that tranquility has only been enhanced by the built-up area around it, and you really notice that sort of juxtaposition as you enter it. So that really affects how we experience the sort of cemetery as an asset. And the communal value again is very similar to what we saw with the memorial. Obviously, it's somewhere like this where we have a focal point for commemoration and memory and loss and remembrance, that's what gives cemeteries a particularly noteworthy amount of communal value. So I mean, I hope that's, I realise that was rather a canter, but again, these case studies are all on the website, so please do have a look through and see the sort of full entries that land use consultants have put together for each of these and several more, and hopefully that will just help with sort of understanding the kind of things that we look at with those values and actually how wide-ranging they are. And that's one of the advantages of local listing is, rather than statutory designation where you have special architectural and historic interest, with this local level of heritage, you can actually have a much broader canvas and draw in a lot more local interest, a lot more local history. So I hope that's been useful, and I shall now hand over, I believe, to Caroline, or is it to Alison?
I think it's me.
I do apologize. Thanks a lot, Alison.
Thank you, James. No, I think I hope you found that useful and a really good way at looking at what information we're ideally looking at attracting from those of you submitting nominations. I just wanted to say here, it is quite difficult for us because obviously we've sent out the invitations quite far and wide, and while we're talking to you, we're not entirely sure who our audience is. We're assuming it's a mixture of interested local people from town and parish councils, some councillors, some interest and amenity groups, and we're very aware that the level of knowledge is going to be quite varied across the different groups. So James has given us some really good background into what we are looking for, but please do bear in mind Fiona's video, which showed that you can still submit a nomination with a relatively limited amount of information, and then it will be, if you think it's important but you're not quite sure how you match those categories and the different values, please submit it anyway, and we can then get it assessed. So I'm just going to take you through where we're going with next steps. So obviously what we're doing now is asking you for community nominations for both within BCP and within Dorset. Information is the same on both of our websites. So if you live in BCP, use the BCP website. If you're in Dorset, use the Dorset website. If you're an organisation such as Historic Gardens Forum, which covers a wider area, then feel free to put it into either. And when LUC are looking at them, then they can put them in both lists. So we're asking for community nominations either from individuals or groups, and certainly from Dorset we've already got a number of nominations in blocks for particular communities. So we've already had, for instance, Swanage, Sturminster Marshall and Portland have all actually done some work within their communities to develop their own local lists, which we will be including in our overall assessments. We're also going to be looking at local assets that are already on things like neighbourhood plans and conservation area appraisals. So if you're aware of things that are already in those documents that have gone through a public consultation, we will be using those in developing our lists. So once we get to the end of our consultation period on the 11th of April, the next step will be that working with land use consultants, they will actually then undertake an assessment of each of the nominations against the criteria that James has just been talking through. Once they've done that, they will then compile a draft list for Dorset and a draft list for BCP. We're then going to both have a public consultation on those draft lists so that people can comment on the draft lists. That will give an opportunity for people to make their comments if they think there's things that should be on there that aren't on there, things that are on there that shouldn't be on there. And the fact that it goes through a public consultation process means there's a rigor about it when we finally adopt it. So once we've undertaken that public consultation, The list will be updated and we will take them to our respective councils. So it will go to BCP Council and Dorset councils for consideration and adoption, and then the lists will be published. I'm fairly sure that one of the questions we're going to get is what is the timescale for all of this? And I'm afraid I'm going to be deliberately vague. And one of the main reasons for that is at the moment, we have no idea how many community nominations we're going to get in. We may have a handful, we may have hundreds. If we're really lucky, we may have thousands. And obviously, depending on the numbers we get, that will influence how long it takes to actually go through those and undertake all those assessments. But you saw Fiona on the video earlier. She's one of our comms people. She and Suzanne will make sure that we are providing frequent or relevant updates to let people know how we're getting on with that process. Once we've got that list, that isn't going to be the absolute end, because we want it to be a living and developing list. And that's one of the things we will be looking at over the next couple of months. I'm suspecting that we're going to be looking at maybe having an annual opportunity to update a list. I don't think it's going to be realistic to do it much more frequently than that, but probably every 1 to 2 years we'd look at doing a review, and then that means that if you've missed something that you find later on in the day, you still will have an opportunity to contribute and put in other nominations. So I've just mentioned the timetable depends on the workloads generated. So what we're hoping from all of you is that you're going to come up with lots of nominations so that we're all kept really busy and we have really good lists that are very representative of the local communities across the whole of Dorset. So I think that's probably enough of us talking. I'm going to hand you back to Sarah, who is going to manage the questions.
Hi, thank you, Alison. So, we've got hands up already. I was just going to say there's lots of ways you can pop your questions in today. If you want to put your hand up with using the Teams little hand at the top of your screen, you're more than welcome to pop your questions in the chat, or just flick your camera on and wave at me and I will try and get all your questions answered. So Graham Perry, I think you'll probably be first. Do you want to go with your question?
Well, I'm not sure what it was then. Well, I would say an excellent presentation. I had 6 questions written down, and the only one that I had asked on email. I tried to use the nomination. I actually put a nomination in online. It worked fine, but I did make an email query. I could only add 1 photo. It suggests that you can submit photographs, but when I tried to use the online form, it wouldn't let me add more than 1 photo. Do you know about that?
I don't know if the project team can answer that one. If not, I will certainly look into that for you, because I'm sure you should be able to add more than the 1 photo.
Otherwise, I'd say, yeah, it was very, very straightforward to use, very, very good, very simple.
Lovely, thank you. Alison, did you want to come in there?
I was just going to add, Caroline and I will work with Sarah to look into that. We have trialled it ourselves, but I have to admit we only uploaded 1 photo when we were doing the practice, so I haven't tried to do more. But thank you for that, and we will look into that, because you should be able to upload more than 1 photo.
Yeah, we were hoping and looking for people to do that as part of the submission. So yeah, we'll definitely check that. Thank you for raising it.
Thanks.
Thank you. I think the next question is from Caroline. Caroline, do you want to pop your camera on and say hi?
Yes, here I am. Hi there. Sorry, I've got a few questions for you. I've made a list and you have answered most of this. You've gone along. Thank you. I'm from the Broadstone Neighbourhood Forum, and we're responsible for the Broadstone Neighbourhood Plan. Additionally to that, we've just finished a project to install 4 to 5 interpretation boards across Broadstone, which actually demonstrate our heritage assets. So the timing of this is very good for us as well. But we identified 39 assets. Now, all of those aren't of merit to be, I'm sure, make the list, but certainly a third of them are. So my first question is, does that sort of thing, can we do that en bloc? Because it doesn't make sense to do 12 individual things to you when we've already done that work, in albeit in a different format, on our interpretation boards.
That's a really good question. I don't know the answer. Alison, Caroline, do you know if we can do that? How do you want to pick that one up?
Do you want to pick that up, Caroline?
Yeah.
I'd have to say, could you just repeat the last bit of the question, please?
We know through our own work that we've got at least 12 out of 39 and counting assets that I would say are worthy or weighty enough to actually be submitted for consideration. So obviously we don't want to do 12 individual applications. What we'd like to do is use some of our existing text and material to submit these en bloc to you and say we think this, this and this.
I see what you mean. Yes, I think
Yes.
that's going to be appropriate, because I think I've got a feeling that's something similar to what Alison was referring to with some of her community.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if you've got it in some kind of spreadsheet format or something,
Yeah,
that would be easy to sort of for LUC to sort of pick up, that would be
okay.
helpful. And if there's any way you're able to kind of connect it to any of the sort of values and criteria that we were talking about, if there's any way to do that, that would also be helpful. But I appreciate that might be unpicking things a bit too much for yourselves. So I think it's a do what you can, but I appreciate if you're feeling it's a bit too much to do it individually, then please do submit it. And there's an email address which is on the screen now, which you might want to use.
Okay.
Yeah, just to add to that, that's kind of what we've been doing with some of those other ones I did refer to. I was letting Caroline go first because obviously you're within BCP, but with the ones that Swanage and Sturminster have produced, they've already done a lot of work on theirs. And one of the things we're going to look at our next meeting with LUC is how we can assess those if they're not quite done using our criteria, because as Caroline says, if you've already spent quite a lot of time on it, we don't want you to be having to do a lot more. So if you've got them in that kind of format, please submit them. If you want to submit them directly, the 2 emails for both the councils, the BCP one and the Dorset one, are there, so you could submit something to them and then we can make sure that LUC get them as part of the submissions.
Okay, thank you. The next question I have is a more specific one. It's about cemeteries. One of the things we have in Broadstone, we have a mixed asset within one cemetery. So although Broadstone Cemetery is fairly unremarkable architecturally, it nevertheless has the Alfred Russel Wallace Memorial, which I would argue is of national importance there. And we also have Commonwealth War Graves and SBS Squadron War Graves. Now, some of those are in local importance, so they may be mixed classes, but within the same area. So when we get a knotty problem like that, do we nominate the whole cemetery or do we nominate them as separate assets, even though they're co-located?
Should I answer that?
Yeah, who's going?
Yeah, you go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm speaking really for BCP's area, but certainly I think, I think I would just choose one or the other, really. I wouldn't worry too much about the category. It's more to flag up that the assets are there and try and identify them as being significant. Okay. I mean, I certainly think, like you say about the Alfred Russel Wallace monument, obviously, that's I'd agree with you that that's a sort of nationally significant monument because of its association. I'm surprised it's not listed actually as an individual monument.
I've just checked actually, and it's not. I've just looked on your map, and amazingly, it's not. And that's part of the problem. Okay, the other question I've got, sorry, I'm hogging time. It's slightly more contentious thing. I think we will get asked this as a forum because we do the neighbourhood plan as well, and we may get challenges on things like planning application decisions. So what are the implications? It's all right, it's all nice and fine us having our lovely lists, and I'm up for that, but we may get developers or may get residents feel that they can't do things they want to do because somebody somewhere has decided this is on the list somewhere. So I just want to sort of understand any adverse implications for anybody else, really, aside from the good thing about having the list. Is there a downside to this where it's going to impact somebody who might want to sort of build next to something,
Yeah, I think that's kind of good to note, actually, because there are sort of two sides to this, really, obviously, because a lot of people will be nominating properties or places that they don't own. It's not theirs. They're saying, well, I like that because I'm in the community and I appreciate that. But at the end of the day, somebody else owns that property or has responsibility for it. So there is a balance there to understand how that impacts on the person who's got responsibility for the property, if it is a property or structure. And I think that there's a balance there, and actually the planning system, without any extra intervention beyond the list that we're creating here, would actually still allow people to actually make alterations and changes as a starting point. There's another stage that could be considered where either councils could consider some further restrictions on any properties that are on its local list, but that is another process and a different category, and you have to get engaged with the person who owns the property as part of that process, and it's a legal process. So the list creation part doesn't actually change the rights of the property owner in terms of making changes. However, what it does do is provide clarification up front, as Alison said earlier, in terms of assessment against planning policy and the way that a planning application is assessed. So once it gets to the point that a planning application is required, planning policy is applied, and then we would consider the fact that actually this is an asset on the local list and therefore has need to be considered as a material consideration. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does. I just didn't want our residents to think we were sort of somebody who's just come along, got a finger in the air. Well, I like this, as you say, and that's the danger.
Yeah.
We could be seen as meddling rather than and causing residents problems as well.
Yeah,
but
it doesn't change anything for them. Yeah, it doesn't immediately change anything for them. That's the key thing.
Okay.
But just the planning policy does become more significant. It's probably the only thing that makes the difference for them. But it doesn't stop them making alterations.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Caroline. I think next, Peter Coe, you've got your hand up for a question.
Thank you very much. I'm in Lyme Regis. I'm a heritage lead on the Lyme Regis Society, and I have three questions. One is because I chair a diocesan advisory committee, and my committee in the last 2 years has never discussed this issue. So I wasn't sure, and it's not in Dorset, so I wasn't sure whether you've involved the DAC that relates to the aspects of Dorset, but it's quite likely that DACs themselves would want to be part of this, because quite a few of their areas are not listed, not scheduled, etc. And I'm not sure they'll know about it. So that's one question. The next question is, if somebody discloses something that, I'm so sorry. If somebody discloses something which is a building, which, as you've just said, belongs to somebody either as a work area or as a home, at present under the listings process, most listings only tell you what's outside. They tell you the external part. They never tell you necessarily what's inside unless that was part of the original listing process. So again, it's an issue as to whether you'd need permission from the person owning the building about the detail they might give you. And the third one is my local issue, which is quite different, and that is that in Lyme Regis, the Lynchway that relates to the mill and structures the River Lim going through the town, and the Burgage plot walls, which are still all extant, none of that is scheduled or listed and is a major issue for local people. When one puts in a suggestion for local listing, would you simply on the map draw the whole of that central area of Lyme? And then you could complete all the criteria and the values you've talked about. But it would be a tall order, as Caroline's just said, to have to submit each of those wall lines, because really it is the whole of the middle of Lyme Regis.
Can I?
All of the medieval walls are still there.
Yeah.
They all relate to the Lynchway and the way the river runs through the town. You can't date them, but they're certainly 1,000 or so years old.
Thank you very much for that. I'll come back on those 3 points if I may. I think it was a very good point about the DACs, and I think certainly if if you're able to perhaps forward us some contact details to one of our contact addresses that we've got on the screen now, we can certainly make sure that they're included. Yes, obviously, whilst many church buildings themselves are sort of exempt and all this, and they sort of have their own systems. It's the other buildings and structures around which may be certainly of interest. So yeah, thank you very much for that. The second point, yes, there is obviously even with listing, a lot of the times the inspectors never went into the building, even though they probably had a better chance of doing so. So yes, there isn't really a way of necessarily, unless that person wants to allow one in to sort of inspect, and those are the sorts of things that wouldn't really come to light unless a planning application came up which required a visit from someone like me who would go and look inside and see how it all tied together. But obviously, I mean, I should have mentioned earlier, the interiors are obviously very important to the architectural value, because the outside can be very could be very different, so you may have a very well preserved interior even if the outside's been changed. So exactly. So that's a good point. And the third point on the walls, again, I'm not sure if you can draw multiple polygons on the map, but if not, I would say just draw a square around the whole lot and explain, and then we can tinker with it from the technical end once it comes in. But yeah, I'm familiar with the walls you mentioned, because I've pointed out similar ones in Charmouth actually when I was working with the neighbourhood plan team. And I said, these are really, really important. They should be flagged up as locally important structures, because they still have those burgage plot boundaries. So so that's what I'd say on that.
Thank you.
Can I just thanks, James. Can I just add a fairly minor point? But when you were saying about internal features, which you'd obviously, if you wanted to get any information, you'd need permission of the person who was going in there. We have got some information about photography on the websites, and please do have a bit of a look at it, because when you're submitting photos, do try and make sure that you're not submitting anything that's going to be in contravention of anything GDPR wise, general data protection regulations. So they include things like making sure that you don't have car number plates and things that are identifiable as particular to particular individuals. So it was just a minor point, really. Sorry, Sarah, you can ask the next question.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Alison. Next question, I think, is it Safcol? I'm not sure if I've pronounced that right. Do you want to come in with your question?
Yeah. Sorry.
That's all right.
It's okay. Well, right, we've got videos on. Sorry, my name's Colin Marsh from Sutton Points. I think you've probably answered this question in relation to the question from Broadstone, but I'll just clarify it for absolute certainty. Because the original communication sort of indicated you were not interested in information from conservation areas or where there were made neighbourhood plans. Sutton Points does have a made neighbourhood plan from 2020 and is largely in the conservation area. Although it wasn't a policy within our plan for reasons I'll not go into, we did have an aspiration to actually do exactly what is happening now, to try to find a way with the local authority of getting a local assets onto a local list. We, as part of that process, had produced by a consultant a professional report. I think there's about 20 plus buildings on that list with lots of detailed photographs and everything. So I presume, again, you would accept that as just sending the link through, or the relevant document to the Planning Conservation at Dorset Council email address. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the most sensible way to deal with these, the existing lists that have been put together by neighbourhood plans. And we have a similar thing with some of the conservation area appraisals that that we have that identify locally important buildings and other things. So yeah, that is something that we are going to try and incorporate and bring them straight in, lock, stock and barrel. So yeah, I mean, we'll probably have to map them in some way onto our system, but we don't necessarily have to have it all typed out, I don't think, in the same format.
Yeah.
So hopefully that'll be helpful.
Okay. Because there's obviously a lot of information there that will help you anyway in the process. In that case, it's got a lot of detailed history and explanation against the sort of criteria, which you will obviously want to verify. But yeah. Okay, that answers the question. Thank you.
I was going to say this is a bit like we're your accountants, because you can submit lots and lots of receipts to your accountant in whatever format, and your accountant has to make sense of whatever you send in, and that's our job to do that with the information that the community send us. We will shake it down, have a look at it, work with LUC, and work our way through it. But yeah. Accountants always want things as they want them, as we've asked for you to fill in our forms. But if you want to just send in your receipts, then send in your receipts.
I have visions of loads of receipts coming at you now, Caroline. I think the last question is a hands up. Yeah, Joe, do you want to ask your question?
Hiya.
Hi.
Yeah, I've just got a few things I'd like clarified. If a building is already on the local list, does it have to be nominated again?
Did you catch that one, Caroline?
Yes, I did, Joe. If it's already on the list, does it have to be updated again? I think our priority is for new things, to look at new things. But the whole point of the project from the BCP side, where we have existing lists, as Alison mentioned at the moment, they're actually quite old, and they're actually lists that have been done differently by the different preceding councils. So we are trying to bring them together, so into one. So ideally, what we're doing is actually sort of assessing the ones that were on the preceding council's list, so that we're assessing them to get a consistent list for BCP, as well as look at adding new ones to that. So the answer to your question is yes, we are. As part of this process, yes, we are.
Is the condition of the building relevant?
Is the condition of the building relevant? That's a good question. James, have you got any thoughts on that one?
An interesting one. I'd probably say not tremendously, and because obviously ruins can be of tremendous archaeological and architectural value in themselves. So even if a building was sort of ruined, if there was still some association or vestigial sort of architectural interest that it had, I still think it would be something that would be worth looking at. So I wouldn't say condition should put one off from nominating.
Okay. And the last one is it possible to nominate a building outside your own area?
I'm sorry, I can't actually hear you.
Is it possible to nominate a building in a different area to the one you live in?
Yes, I mean, as long as it's within Dorset, so as long as it's within either Dorset Council or BCP, we can't accept nominations for Hampshire. But if you live in BCP and you want to nominate something in Dorset or vice versa, that's absolutely fine.
Is that it, Joe? Thank you, Joe. I think that's everything from the hands. No, I've got another hand there. Let me just go back and check. Verity, would you like to come in with your question? Oh, I'll lose my voice now. Hi, Verity, thanks.
Can you hear me okay? Sorry.
Yes,
just
yeah, we can.
Thanks ever so much for all the work that's gone into putting this together. It's really, really helpful. I'm sort of probably asking a question on behalf of several colleagues who are here from Southbourne in Bournemouth, Southbourne Heritage Forum. I really liked Caroline's analogy about us sort of sending in receipts to an accountant. I think one of the things we're sort of trying to grapple with is perhaps a worry that what we submit online might not be of good enough quality, the sort of information when it goes to the consultants, and there's this sort of fear that things may not get through the assessment criteria if we haven't managed to provide all the information we could do. And part of the fear of that is that obviously most of us are not necessarily local historians, although there were a couple here that we could perhaps draw on. But it was more just if somebody could sort of give us some guidance about how things will be assessed, because presumably the consultants can only work with the type of information that they're actually given at the point of nomination, or are things going to sort of flag up and then it's part of the consultant's remit to do, say, extra work or research before they kind of include or exclude? Did that make any sense?
Yes, it did. I guess it's so one of the things that could happen is that the consultants might look at a nomination and go, oh, there's something here, and they might go back to whoever sent it in to say, have you got anything more on this, or maybe an additional photograph or two or something like that. So there's a potential for additional information to be asked for to help with that assessment. Mm-hmm. In terms of the how deep the consultants will go on creating and generating their own research, that is a good question. We might have to just have a bit further conversation with the LUC about what they feel able to do on that front, because we're just conscious of potential workload for them and actually being able to get through this process so we can create a list, if you see what I mean. Because it might be that goes on to a possible pile and needs a bit further work kind of to come back to or something. So yeah, I think it would be useful to kind of come back to, I think, and discuss that a bit further with the consultants actually.
Okay.
Can I just add as well? Yeah, there is. I mean, you may have seen it already, Verity, but there's on both websites have got sections on some basic info on researching buildings and heritage assets, and the particular ones I would say are very good are the Historic England series of introductions to heritage assets, and there's about 40 of them. I mean, they're quite brief, so they just give you basically match one with similar to whatever it is you're looking at, and then it gives you a really good overview of that particular heritage asset. So whatever you have, you can slot quite nicely against what it says in there, and it'll give you some sort of context from which to work. But yeah, other than that, it's pretty much, I think, as what Caroline would say, don't worry too much, I would say.
I think some of the key... Sorry, Jim.
No, that's it. Yeah, I'm done.
So I think some of the key ones, we've got some of the sort of older, more iconic sort of Southbourne buildings. They're slightly easier for us to have collated some information. And I think where we're looking at the sort of Bournemouth list, there are some, like you were saying, some buildings that are perhaps relevant to Bournemouth, like the first housing built post First World War here in Southbourne, and their links to another key builders in Bournemouth. But even though we've done sort of what I'd call layman's research, looking into echo, that kind of thing, it's people like colleagues Alwyn Liddell that actually probably have a bit more data, and we don't quite have the resources to go in, but are aware of buildings built in, say, the 20s here that are either collectively or singularly probably quite, given this is a Bournemouth list as well, quite relevant. So I think that's where I'm sort of thinking, not just more iconic buildings, but some things that kind of come to our fore as we've been operating.
I think the main thing, as James said, is to put as much information as you've got, and if from your local community there are particular things that you are interested or valuable to you as a local community, put those into whichever seems to be the most relevant section. Just, we're not expecting more than probably a paragraph or two, probably at most, in any of the sections. Hardly any of them are going to have all 6 of the different assets filled in, values filled in, and probably most of them are going to have 1 or 2 of them filled in. So I think the ones that James went through were examples that had lots of different values within a particular asset type, but I don't think we'll be expecting that much information on most of the ones we get. We might get a few that have got that level of information, and as Caroline says, I think then what we'll have to do is we'll have to discuss with the consultants, and a lot of it will depend on how much we get. So if we just have a handful that needs to be looked at in more detail, it may be that we can get the consultants to do that. If we get a lot that would need to be looked at, then we probably wouldn't have the resources to do that. So obviously the more information that you provide, the easier it is for them to come to a view.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
And just to add, I think I mistakenly had told at least one either individual or community group that there's online boxes to fill in. I think I said 3,000 words for each category. It's not. It's 3,000 characters. Just to be clear. So it's not it's more as Alison describes, as it's kind of a paragraph or two potentially, rather than an essay for each of those different values and characters criteria.
Okay. Thanks again, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you. There's a couple more questions in the chat that I'll just pick up. Penny's asking if you can check to see if an asset has already been nominated. I can answer that one, James. It's actually in the video, Penny. It's on the website. It's not within the form, but you can go online and check to see if an asset has already been nominated. And what else
I think though on Sarah, we weren't sure whether what she meant. So what you can do on our website, through the website, is you can check whether it's already got something,
yes,
say whether it's listed. But James and I were on the chat. We're not sure that you can tell. I don't think you can tell if someone's already nominated something for the local list.
Not within this process. No, I don't think.
Not within this process. So no, you won't be able to tell if somebody has already nominated your favourite local building, but you will be able to tell if it's already got a national designation and therefore doesn't need to be included on a local list. I don't know if that helps.
Lovely, thanks. And there's another one from Caroline. Given the comments about the amount of work for some areas, do you think the 11th of April for closure date is too ambitious? I think we may need a little longer to create a robust block submission. And if some assets don't meet all 6 criteria, then how will you weight the value of those which are strong but only in a few of the criteria? So I want to pick those ones up.
I can answer the second one. The second one relates to some information. Again, it is on the website. Which section is it under? It is under standards for inclusion on the list. Under that section on the website, it talks about how we will do that sort of scoring assessment that I talked about whether it was met of interest that was outstanding, high, moderate or little. And there's actually different scenarios that would be applied. And that, so it doesn't have to meet all 6 criteria, because as we were saying, some of these assets will only meet 2, 3, 4. But there's 3 different scenarios which we're suggesting that will mean that it will get added. And it's probably, to be honest, it's a bit convoluted to try and go through here on this call, but happy to have a separate chat. But it is on the website setting out what that scenario is, and there's a table giving some examples of how something would get applied or wouldn't get applied. So I hope that starts to answer that, but probably best to take it offline for more detail.
Thank you.
I think with regard to the timescales, I think we have given 8 weeks. It is a bit of a balance with when we're supposed to actually have this work done from a governmental point of view, and making sure that we give people enough time. We felt that 8 weeks was a reasonable chunk of time, particularly as we have done some promotion previously about the project. And I know certainly in Dorset we've had queries from 1 or 2 people saying, when is it going to be available for, you know, when can we submit? So I think we've certainly know of some people who've already been working on these. If you're really struggling, I think what I'd say is submit as much as you can, and, you know, by all means, send an email or contact one of us and have a discussion with us, because I don't think we're going to be formally extending that deadline, but depending on how, you know, how much we get submitted, we may be able to have a little bit of flexibility, but we've got to draw a line somewhere. And I think the other side of it is that it won't be the absolute end of the process. As we said earlier, we will be providing opportunities on a regular basis to update our lists. So in a sense, the lists are never completed. They are always evolving. But as I say, do send us an email and one of us will get back to you and discuss that with you if you're really having problems and you're only, you know, but I would hope that you'd be able to get a reasonable way through the list that you're wanting to create.
Thanks, Alison. I think that's all the questions in the chat. If I've missed something, shout now. Joe, you've still got your hand up. Do you have another question? Are you there, Joe?
No, I don't have any more questions.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's it for the questions then, folks. Shall I hand back to you guys, team? Alison, Caroline,
yeah, just like to say thank you very much, everybody, for coming tonight, and thank you for all your questions. I think it's really great to have a good diversity and variety of questions covering a whole number of subjects that is within this project. I think that shows that you're all really interested, and I think that we're all really excited and look forward to receiving your nominations. If you've got any issues, please do email one of those email addresses. James or I would get back to you if you're in Dorset, and Caroline if you're in BCP. And if you've got any more